If she doesn't scare you, no evil thing will. Cruella, Cruella, Deville. Look, I cut my hair. Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, which is part of a series I call Fashioning Favorites, wherein I analyze the looks of my favorite film and TV characters and recreate their costumes with an eye towards sustainability. The jury is in. Cruella is not a great movie. It was a very expensive movie to make. Emma Stone and Emma Thompson are both a delight to watch on screen, and in my opinion, it has an air of being fun, of being a romp. It does a thorough job of avoiding criticism from animal rights groups, but it does a terrible job of avoiding criticism from mental health advocates. Like, why does it use the word and the concept of being psycho so willy-nilly?
I guess you were always scared, weren't you, that I'd be a psycho?
There's this vague idea that our villain/heroine has some psychological condition that prevents her from being good, and it reeks of mental illness stigma. Anyway, Screen Junkie's honest trailer about Cruella criticizes the purpose of the movie like so.
Because this film isn't so much about telling a story as it is an elaborate excuse for two fashionistas to dress fight each other. Finish her.
Screen Rant also pokes fun at the fashion plot.
So now her mission is to start upstaging the Baroness all the time as revenge.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, she's gonna show up and be like, hey, everybody look at my clothes.
Nice.
And then later she's gonna be like, everybody look at my clothes.
Amazing.
And then a bit later she's gonna pop out and be like, everybody look at my clothes.
I love it.
Oh, and I should mention these are very nice clothes.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to gloss over the fact that both of those videos seem to adopt a misogynist tone in dismissing fashion as a frivolous pursuit, and I'm just going to agree that the competition between Cruella and the Baroness does seem a bit empty. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention some of the other messaging problems, like the attempt to associate Cruella with the punk style of the 70s, despite the fact that she is not anti-establishment, but rather has as her entire goal to infiltrate and take over the establishment. There are also some really interesting discussions on the internet about the movie's promotion of girl boss feminism and capitalism. So I'll drop a link or two in the description box in case you want to explore those topics further. But even the costumes, which are supposed to be the main draw of the film, have been roundly criticized. Here on YouTube, we have a pretty scathing review of the fashion by Mina Lay and a lukewarm response by Hot Lamode. In print, Vogue's review by Liam Hess is titled What Cruella Gets Wrong and Strangely Right About Fashion. To be fair though, the focus in the latter is less on the quality of the costumes themselves and more on the way the film portrays the fashion industry. While this movie strives to make Cruella a sympathetic character, it shows no sympathy at all for the fashion world at large. It sinks its claws into stereotypes about the cutthroat nature of the industry. Or should I say cut wrist, given the scene where the Baroness nicks Estella's wrist and instead of apologizing, demands that a fabric in the color of her blood be sourced. This is a competitive, hierarchical, and abusive work environment in desperate need of a better HR department and a union. We love to glamorize the poor treatment of others as being a necessary side effect of pursuing great art, and we love to treat ambitious women like ladder-climbing bitches. I guess a movie like this is the perfect opportunity for me to clarify my own interests within fashion and set some boundaries. I am interested in fashion history in a cultural sense, but I'm not too deeply concerned with the fashion industrial complex. I mean, I am artistically interested, I suppose, and as a citizen, I have a vested interest in the contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, but I know very little about high fashion. I know a handful of designers whose clothes I tend to like, but that's it. I've never been one to desire a designer handbag or designer sunglasses. Which is not to say that you have to own high fashion in order to follow it and analyze it. See Bliss Foster's video about anti-fashion for more on this concept. It's really good. Actually, you should follow Bliss Foster in general if you want an education in fashion. My main role, though, is to be a critic of the industry and its problems with elitism, wastefulness, and exclusion. It tends to be a very classist, racist, and ableist world. So I'm going to follow my nose and recreate costumes that interest me without feeling compelled to comment on the detailed references to fashion houses, since I don't really know what I'm talking about. And I don't mean that to contradict the famous Devil Wears Prada speech about cerulean blue. I don't doubt that there's a lot to be explored in understanding the constellation of designers and fashion shows. It's just not in line with my current interest of putting together outfits and costumes based on movie characters. And that's what I'm supposed to be talking about right now, the costumes in Cruella. So let's talk about the main gripe that most people seem to have with the fashion and thus with the entire plot of the movie. That the 101 Dalmatians villain, now turned main character, does not, as we were taught in the original Disney classic, wear the fur of slaughtered puppies. Many are dissatisfied that Cruella seems so far removed from the brand of evil she's supposed to espouse, killing Dalmatians and skinning them to make coats. This milder version of Cruella put a lot of people off. When I read the comments on Mina Leigh's video, it seemed like there was a very popular opinion that origin stories for villains in general are unwanted, and a case of liberalism gone too far. The very need to explain how they got that way is apparently something the public wants to suppress. I do not agree with this perspective, but I also don't like, brace yourselves, superhero movies. I know, I'm sorry, I don't like superhero movies. I know that's a really unpopular opinion. People freaking love superhero movies. And I'm sorry, but I cannot get comfort out of the good versus evil theme having no nuance. There's this fantasy of good guys and bad guys being clearly distinct from each other and easily marked in a world that otherwise resembles our own, which is why I don't take issue with the same thing in regular old fantasy. If you like superhero movies though, please go get your joy. I am in no way criticizing you for liking what you like. All I can think about, though, is that it doesn't work that way in real life. And I partly blame these kind of movies for letting us think that if bad things happen, it must be because there's some force of evil and select people who have consciously aligned themselves with the darkness. But really, it's just regular people who do bad things. This applies even more so to the violent villains of blockbuster movies. People in the real world who commit violent crimes are indeed almost exclusively people who have themselves been victims of cycles of abuse. That's proven statistics, not liberalism. Monsters aren't real. They're just people. And pretending that they are only monsters prevents us from breaking cycles and allowing for effective rehabilitation. That is liberalism. Okay, this is getting pretty heavy for a Disney movie, but that's actually kind of my point. The reason Cruella doesn't totally work as a villain origin story is that it's a Disney movie. I'm tempted to argue against those people in the comment section and say, haven't you ever heard of Wicked? That's the entire idea here, that the story you know is the one told by the victors and it has skewed your perception of the bad guy. You only think you know that Cruella is a doggy murderess because that's what Roger and Anita would have you believe. Cruella, being a fashion maven at the top of her game, quickly becomes, when viewed through the eyes of her enemies, an unhinged woman with a monomaniacal obsession with black and white spotted coats. So when it's retold, of course we have to find out that it's all been a fabrication. A fabrication? See what I did there? The original version being as inaccurate as old history textbooks are makes sense because it's all about the shift in power. The problem with that take then, and why I'm not in the comments making that argument, aside from the fact that I really respect Mina Lay and I wouldn't want her to think I'm being contrary, is that the story is still being told by Disney. They're trying to pretend that they're both the ones in control and the underdogs flipping the script. And I think that's a better explanation for why the movie isn't fantastic, not that it's a villain origin story in the first place. And I, for one, am perfectly content not to see any coats in this movie that were made out of an animal's fur. But I'm a vegan, so take that with a grain of salt. To focus on the good, you can't deny that many of Cruella's costumes are total showstoppers, and that even though she uses clothes as a weapon, you can tell that she absolutely loves doing it, and that is fun to watch. Liam Hess in Vogue notes that the movie is in some ways about the transformational power of getting dressed up, whether that's how slipping on an ornate mask can offer a strange freedom, how a sequined jumpsuit can turn you into a glam rock god for the night, or how a fur coat can inspire a lifelong bloodlust for the skin of Dalmatians, the last part I assume being tongue-in-cheek. So, in that spirit of the transformational power of getting dressed up, it's time for you to watch me get dressed up in Cruella costumes. I have 5 Cruella looks for you today, and if you're used to TikTok videos with 1,000 outfits per clip, that may not seem very impressive, but if you compare it to the 3 looks I usually do, it's precisely 40% more looks. And those 3 looks I normally do are actually 66.666% more than what you need to create a single Halloween costume, so I'm giving you 80% more with 5 looks. Don't you think that deserves a subscribe? Without further ado, let's get into the looks. Woohoo! So there they are, 5 costumes inspired by Disney's Cruella. Before I go, I do want to say that I have a dream for the future to recreate Cruella's garbage dress because A, it's stunning, and B, I think it could be a great way to talk about trash as a sustainability statement in the style of some of my favorite creators like Patty Gonya and The Girl Gone Green. So if you want me to have the opportunity to do something like that, share this video with your like-minded friends and ask them to subscribe too, please and thank you. It means a lot to me that you're here watching, and I love reading your comments, so let's keep the conversation going down below. Please remember to consume fashion critically with the planet in mind and to take your fun very seriously. Thanks again, you're the best, and I'll see you next time for another adventure in fashioning favorites.